All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This one is interesting. This time we have a request from a listener,
Okay.
and they want to know how a man can help a woman be more feminine in a relationship.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is a good one.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. And to be honest with you, um, when I first saw this request, I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit
Yeah.
because I thought, oh boy, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, I thought this is actually a really important question to address.
I think so too.
Because it gets at some pretty fundamental things about relationships
Definitely.
and about gender and about how we see ourselves in each other.
Absolutely. And I think it's, anytime we're talking about gender and relationships, there's always a lot of baggage,
Oh, yeah, a lot of baggage.
a lot of assumptions,
Yeah,
a lot of societal expectations. And
Right.
so I think it's important to kind of unpack all of that before we even start to get into the how-to.
right, exactly. And that's kind of what we're here to do today,
Yeah.
right, is to kind of unpack this question
Yeah.
and to explore it from, all sides. And
Absolutely.
to see what we can learn from it. So maybe before we jump into the specifics of the listener's question,
Yeah.
maybe we can just take a step back and talk about this idea of femininity in general.
Yeah.
What does it even mean, like when we say someone is feminine?
Right. Well, and that's kind of the first hurdle, isn't it? Is that like
Yeah.
what are we even talking about when we use that word?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is to assume that there is like a universal definition
Right.
of femininity, like
Yeah.
that it means the same thing to everyone everywhere.
Right, exactly. And, that's just not the case.
Not at all.
I mean, even within like one culture,
Yeah.
you're going to find
Right.
all these different interpretations.
Absolutely. I mean, like think about it this way, like if you were to ask like 10 different people on the street
Mm.
what femininity means to them, you'd probably get 10 different answers.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And they might all be valid in their own way.
Right.
So I think, before we even start talking about how a man can help a woman be more feminine,
Uh-huh.
we have to acknowledge that there is no right or wrong answer here.
Yeah.
And that ultimately it's up to each individual woman
Yeah.
to decide what femininity means to her.
Absolutely. And that's actually a really good point to make.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times when we talk about these kinds of things, we tend to focus on the external,
Yes.
like how someone dresses or how they act.
The performance of it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the performance of it.
Yeah.
But really, femininity is so much more than that.
It is.
I mean, it's about how you feel about yourself.
Totally.
It's about your values.
Yes.
It's about your sense of self in the world.
Totally. And it can evolve, right? Like
yeah.
what femininity meant to me, 10 years ago
Yeah.
is very different from what it means to me now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that's something that's important to keep in mind
Definitely.
throughout this whole conversation,
Yeah.
is that femininity is not a static thing.
It's a journey.
It's a journey, exactly.
Okay.
And so, I guess the question then becomes like, how do you support someone on that journey?
Right.
How do you help your partner explore and express their own femininity?
Exactly. And I think, it starts with communication, like you were saying. Like
Uh-huh.
you have to actually have those conversations with your
Yeah.
partner and really listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
And try to understand their perspective.
Uh,
And not just like, wait for your turn to talk,
Right.
but actually like really hear what they're saying and try to empathize with them.
yeah.
And I think once you've done that, once you've kind of established that foundation of communication and understanding,
Yeah.
then you can start to think about how you can support them in more concrete ways.
So what would some of those concrete ways be?
Well, I think it really depends on the individual and on the relationship.
Uh-huh.
But some general things that you could do might include like, encouraging them to pursue their passions.
Okay.
Helping them to create space for themselves.
Yeah.
Maybe taking on some of the household chores or childcare responsibilities so
Yeah.
that they have more time and energy for themselves.
Yeah.
Just being there for them
Yeah.
and listening to them and supporting them in whatever way they need.
Right. And I think it's also important to remember that, supporting someone's femininity doesn't mean
Right.
trying to change them.
Exactly.
Right. It's not about trying to make them into some kind of ideal
No.
that you have in your head.
It's about helping them to become the best version of themselves.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think, that's something that we sometimes forget in relationships. We get so caught up in our own needs and desires
Yeah.
that we forget that our partner is their own person, with their own needs and desires, and we have to respect that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really what it comes down to is respect.
Respect. And I think also, just being mindful of the fact that we're all on a journey,
Yeah.
and we're all constantly evolving.
Right.
And so what femininity means to your partner today
Yeah.
might be very different from what it means to them tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's okay for things to change and evolve.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is to just be open to that.
Right. To be open to that and to be supportive of your partner no matter what.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation.
I feel like we could talk about this for hours.
We really could, and we probably should.
We should.
But unfortunately, we are out of time for today.
Oh.
So I want to thank you so much for joining me
Thank you for having me.
and for sharing your insights with us.
Absolutely.
And to our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in
Yes, thank you.
and for sending in your questions.
Please keep them coming.
We love hearing from you.
Yeah.
So until next time, keep exploring and keep the conversation going.